What do you get when 3 home health PTs and 1 business suit sit down to solve real-world clinician problems? Welcome to Home Health, Suit and Scrubs, the podcast where home health clinicians meet the business side of care. I'm Dan Haggerty, your resident suit, founder of Care in Motion and Chief Revenue Officer at In-Home Therapy. And I'm joined by the Scrubs, Brendan Kirby, Home Health PT, Lisa Thompson, Home Health PT and mind behind Home Health Chronicles, and Dan Catuccio, Home Health PT and social media personality for therapists everywhere. Before we dive in, don't forget to check out careinmotion.co, where you'll find our full podcast library, resources to help you thrive in the field, and a store full of clinician-approved products made specifically for home health pros like yourself. But we're back with Teresa Davis. So this is our first two-time guest. So excited to see Dan and Lisa, of course. It's always a pleasure to be with the two of you. Dan's outside. It looks beautiful.
Looks amazing.
So nice. I'm excited to be outside. I'm like living it up out here.
I would be getting just attacked by mosquitoes.
I mean, they're coming. They're about to come. So if you see me go inside, that's the reason.
But so when we first had Teresa Davis on, Lisa, I think it was a recording that you weren't able to attend.
Correct.
But Teresa, did you want to share just another, even for the audience too, just a quick reintroduction of our second time guest?
First, new to Lisa, right? Hi, I'm Teresa Davis. I am a licensed speech pathologist with about 30 years of experience. I specialize in feeding and swallowing disorders, dysphagia. Have a varied background. I've done everything from pediatrics all the way through geriatrics in just about every setting under the sun. And most recently have become the executive director of hospice and care at Accent Care here in Chicago.
Nice.
And
Awesome.
and the reason that we had wanted you to come back, Teresa, was because I think, Dan, you even mentioned this is an episode to watch twice, or to listen to twice, rather. But we had started out talking about just sort of being a speech therapist in home health. Is, you were the first that we'd had on the show, and then we sort of began talking about your progression into management and into leadership, and sort of what that journey was. And it was so inspirational that we were like, okay, this is one for a second show. So
Thank you.
So I thought we could kick it off, kind of like revisiting where we left off, which is, just sort of that leadership perspective. And some of the different things that you have learned by being on both sides. And I know something that we talked about on one of our episodes was how important it is for clinicians to, we called it befriending the back office, but sort of establishing that relationship. And I know Dan and Lisa, and at the time Brendan, who couldn't join us today, had talked a little bit about like, hey, your scheduler is probably your best friend. So having been on both sides of it, any suggestions or tips on how to facilitate that relationship?
Absolutely. Your intake team and your schedulers, they're the gatekeepers, right? They are, a company lives or dies by them. And I think a therapist, a lot of your success is based on your ability to just really understand them and build relationships with them. They tend to have relationships with just about everybody, from the clients to, if you work in a company like you and I work together, Dan, where we're contracting and providing services, those schedulers are the ones that build relationships with the customers, right? And so they often have inside connections and inside information that can help you be successful as a therapist, help you get more referrals, and help, really from that aspect, from a financial aspect. But they also, they represent the company. They're usually the first line of defense when somebody calls in. That's their first impression, is your intake team. And so it's really important for us as leaders and as therapists to work with them, to help them to grow and to set expectations and to really help them know that, hey, when that phone rings, like, we have to be prepared to answer the phone before it rings, right? We put on our best face. We put on, we want people to know that we're going to take care of them the minute we answer that phone. And so, for me, it was always important when I was a therapist to understand what they did and to show appreciation for what they did, because no one person is more important than anyone else in getting care to a patient. At the end of the day, we're all spokes in the wheel, and that person who answers the phone is no less important than the CEO of the company. And if we're not all working together, then it affects our ability to provide great patient care.
So having been the leader of that office, and so you mentioned that now you're leading Accent Care Hospice in Chicago, but prior to that, you were running the back office operations. So effectively the administrator to a degree for, you know, a company that had probably 100 therapists and was doing, you know, 700 to 1,000 visits a week. Who were your favorite? You can say it now, right? Who is the back office's, you know, favorite therapist that they treated sort of special, and how did they get to that point?
Yeah, I think it's the therapist that, you know, is just respectful and kind and doesn't look down on anybody or think that you're any better than any one person, right? Like I need the schedulers to get me the visits and the appointments, and I need them if I'm in my car and I'm trying to figure out, you know, where my next stop is or who I'm getting an order from. You know, if I don't have a good relationship with my intake team, like that's going to cripple me for the entire day. They're not going to want to work with me. They're not going to want to talk to me. They see my name come up on caller ID and I'm at the bottom of the list, the people that they want to talk to, right? So I think their favorites are the one that, you know, people know when you have a passion for something and they know when you're just kind of like not in it for the right reasons. And I think you're drawn to somebody who really shows excitement and a genuine love for what they do, and they want to be around you. And so I think those intake team are very drawn to those therapists that are excited and have that positivity and are fun to talk to. And then, you know, just put in an effort to get to know them. You know, they're not just a voice on the other end of the line. And I think that's important in all of our working relationships, right? To remember that, hey, you know, your son's birthday was last week. How did that go? Or, you know, how's your mom doing? I heard she was in the hospital. When you take time to get to know people, they are invested in you and they want to help you to succeed as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think a big part of that, you know, just to build, I mean, our schedulers see us at our worst moments. I mean, listen, I just had 3 cancellations, like literally 9, 10, 11, like hospitalization. Like you could show your ugly side if you really, you know, if you really wanted to, but you need to understand, listen, this is a long lasting relationship. It is a long lasting relationship. And I can speak personally for my schedule. Like she's worth to me $500,000 a year. Like she is just amazing and would go to bat for you any day. And she'll call a patient if I can't call the patient and say, listen, Dan has a 12 o'clock open, you know. And so that mutual respect is just so massively important. And so going that little step above, like you just said, Teresa, like following up with an email. Listen, Pat, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for helping me out today and every day. You know. Huge.
What wasn't her name Pat? Dan, I'm remembering this. Yes.
That is correct.
Is Pat
That's
still
my
there?
girl. Oh yeah, she sure is. She's fantastic. She's still fantastic.
Yeah.
So kind of going the opposite side of Dan, who has like an amazing scheduler, right?
Mhm.
I've had worked at previous companies where it may have not been the case, right?
Yeah.
And how would you kind of go about, I mean, we build relationships. I even had that scheduler go, you know I can just call Lisa and it's going to be fine,
Yeah.
right? But how do you go about trying to, I guess, circumnavigate if it's not going well on the
Yeah.
clinician side?
On the clinical side or
Like
in
the
general?
clinician side where, you're either getting visits put on last minute with no communication or
Yeah. Yeah.
like
I think if you're the clinician, so if you've done everything you can to build that relationship, and you can honestly say, you know what, I've done everything here, and I've gone at it with kindness. I've tried to lead with understanding and to try to figure out how to make this better. You know, it's really important to have a good relationship with your leadership team, and hopefully you're having like one-to-ones every week, or every other week, so that you can talk about what's working well and what's not working well. And you know, when you have, I think, a low performer, on any level, on any team, it's important to give them every opportunity to improve. I think that we get to have an opportunity to say, let's talk about what's going on and why you're not meeting expectations and what you're struggling with and how can I help you. And if you've given someone every chance to learn and improve and change, and that's not happening over time, for me, it's so important to move low performers out of an organization because they're toxic, right? Like those are the ones that will stay forever, and your high performers are going to leave because all of your attention are on these people that aren't invested for the right reasons, and they tend to bring an organization down. So I think, that's another conversation to have. Like if everybody is saying the same thing about an individual, and you've done everything you can to bring that person to the water and you just can't get them to drink, like it's time to start having some other conversations about maybe this isn't the best position for you. Let's look at something else, or maybe this just isn't the best place for you to be.
Mhm.
Do you
Okay.
think that the fact that you were a clinician that then ascended through onto the flip side into administration and leadership, do you think that clinicians make better leaders in home health because you're able to see both sides, or do you think that it biases you, or what's your opinion on that?
I don't know that it necessarily makes you a better leader. I think it sets you up to have a better understanding and a knowledge base so that you can relate to what the clinicians are going through, or you can understand their day-to-day needs. Um, I like we talked about last time, I've been really fortunate in that I've been given opportunities in areas where, a speech pathologist necessarily historically hasn't been hired for those positions. And even the position that I'm in now, not coming from a hospice background, the senior VP who interviewed me, I asked him, I said, am I in over my head? I don't have hospice background. And, he said, I can teach you those things. It's the heart of a leader that I can't teach. And so I think the clinical piece or the nature of the business or the setting, someone can learn. But I think anybody with the drive and the desire can be a great leader. And I think the rest you can learn as you go.
There's a saying, I always use it, but I think it came from Nordstrom, but it's hire the smile and train the talent.
Mhm.
So really you should hire when you're talking about leadership and those types of positions, almost any position that non-skilled, obviously,
Yeah.
like you should hire the personality for the right position and then train the skill. So I think
Yep.
that fits in with that.
Yes, you gave me that book when I first started working with you.
And you mentioned talking, to your VP about can I learn this? So shifting into where you're at now with
Yeah.
hospice. So maybe talk a little bit, because we haven't ever broached the topic of hospice on
Mhm.
our show. How has that transition gone? It seems like the things that you've done in your past, this is obviously very, very new. Is it quite a different experience?
It is. And looking back, like I wish I had known more as a home health therapist about hospice and had a better understanding. Because I think of patients that I saw as a home health therapist now, and I'm like, oh, if I had known more, I could have really made better decisions and had different conversations with some of these patients and maybe helped them a little bit on the journey. Um, and I see that
What
a
do you
lot.
wish you would have known?
Um, there's a lot of myths about hospice, about how it's, giving up and it's a last resort and you're going to die within a few days. And lots of things that when you're a home health therapist, your mindset is curative and rehabilitation, right? You're always thinking about how to get the patient better. And at some point, that's not always possible. And if I had had the knowledge in the home with some of my patients where I thought, could I have referred them to have a conversation or spoken to the doctor about hospice or palliative care? Would there have been a better outcome for them versus a lot of rehospitalizations, or as a speech pathologist, patients who wind up with aspiration pneumonia because we decide to place peg tubes because we associate feeding with love, and understanding now that physiologically the body goes through changes that it just doesn't want to eat anymore, and the patient's not suffering. Like there's just so much knowledge to be had. Even now, as we work with our home health counterparts at Accent Care, we're just trying so hard to bridge that relationship, and we take part in care conferences with them so that we can hear about their patients and help them kind of problem solve. Why isn't this patient getting better, and why do they keep going back to the hospital? maybe it's time to start having some conversations about, what's next and how can we guide them on that journey a little bit better.
I know for us, we have a really good relationship with one of the hospice agencies, and the social worker actually comes in
Mhm.
every the first of the month to case conference and discusses hospice. And it's almost like I'm like, oh, you really have to come every single month, right? We know these things, but then like every month, I'm like, it gets back in your mindset of having these difficult
Yeah.
conversations. You know, the holidays are coming up. How are you wanting to spend the holidays? Are you wanting to be in the hospital, in and out? And I never thought in PT school that I would be having to have these difficult conversations with patients and about hospice and kind of end of life. And I've referred quite a few people to hospice services. And I think it's a really good knowledge to have. And I really appreciate, my company and the hospice agency that we work with sharing that knowledge, because
Yeah.
it's really kind of like a gift you can give somebody in a sense. And I always tell the number one thing I hear from patients or their families is, I wish I started hospice sooner,
Mhm.
right? Is one of the main things that you hear, because it can provide a lot of help.
Yeah, absolutely. And we say that all the time. We talk about giving the gift of hospice to patients and families. And really, a big part of our company is being a trusted guide. Like that's part of our values. Like we want to be that trusted guide on the patient's continuum. And, when patients are brave enough to be ready to say, I need you, like we want to help and support. So whether that's coming into monthly care conferences with our home health team, because sometimes those social workers, they can hear what you guys are reviewing on your patients and pick up on things that, when we're in that curative mindset, sometimes we just don't think that way, but they can kind of bring that out of those therapists and say, tell me more about that, and is the patient doing this, and and we can make those connections and start having those conversations.
It it seems like it would be fairly emotionally heavy work. How do you help your team avoid the burnout?
Yeah, it's, I am really happy to find that the clinicians that work in our company, this is their passion. And it is heavy and it is sad, but one of the things, like a turning point for me, because it was very hard in the beginning to be part of this, especially when you come from a rehabilitative mindset, right? To really see patients preparing to say goodbye and see families preparing to say goodbye. And the turning point for me was someone said to me when I asked, how do you do this every day? You have to resolve yourself to the fact that I can't change anything that led up to this moment. I can't change your diagnosis. I can't change anything that happened before we met. But what I can do is make it better now. And we can take this now and make this the best experience for you and support you and really give you this beautiful gift of quality with your family and the opportunity to make those memories and have these conversations. And I think that's how a lot of our team look at it, that we're really providing a gift. And if we weren't here, these patients, our philosophy is nobody dies alone. Everybody deserves the gift of somebody being there. And so no matter what, we've made the commitment that we will be there. And hospice nurses are angels. I mean, it's cliche and you hear it all the time, but seeing it firsthand, it's just a special calling. And they're here because they want to be here.
What 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 types of things do you think in terms of um, partnering more, like you had mentioned, so that there was sort of a better transition? Thinking that most of the folks listening probably have not had as much experience, and you've been in this now for a period of time.
Yeah.
What kinds of suggestions would you have for a home health PT, OT, speech therapist?
Yeah, I think, if you're in a company that has, an umbrella of services, so, providing home health and hospice or personal care services, it's great to get with your leader and really advocate for just relationship building across the continuum. So education, providing guest speakers at case conferences, things like that. If you don't have that, where you're a company that doesn't have access to, that continuum of care. Maybe going to a seminar or learning online or seeking out a company and saying, hey, I'm a home health physical therapist. I'm interested in learning. I mean, I think you'd be hard pressed not to find a hospice company that doesn't want to talk to home health, because if you think about it from a business mindset, it makes sense, right? Like, we want to partner with therapists and therapy companies who need a referral source, because there are patients that are going to need hospice services. I mean, we're all aging, we're all going to get to that place, and our patients are as well. And so I would say, if you have an interest, get with your leadership team and talk about, can I reach out to somebody? Can I spend a day shadowing? Like, we have those opportunities too. I think it only makes us better caregivers if we understand all the services that are out there available to our patients.
One of the things that you'd mentioned was, as a speech therapist, sort of being able to identify some of those signs. But if you're a PT or an OT, are there different things that a clinician should be looking for that would say, hey, this is a trigger, and I need to talk to someone about what may be next for this patient?
Yeah, absolutely. So it always comes down to meeting the patient where they are, right? Like, you always want to gauge if they're ready to have the conversation, and certainly not force anything on them, because it is a scary word. People are still very, very, when they hear the hospice word, it becomes, I was in a nursing home and just visiting with our team, and we were in the hallway, and there was a lady just kind of walking around with her walker, one of the residents there. And she asked who we were, and we said, oh, we're from hospice. And she looked at us like we were the Grim Reaper and went like this and kind of walked away. She didn't want to talk to us anymore. So there's a lot of stigma out there. But as therapists, things that we can recognize, you want to look at patients who definitely have a progressive illness, an illness that we know tends to be terminal. And you look for signs of the body starting to shut down. So are there a lot of rehospitalizations? We're plateauing with goals and progress. We're just not making any progress. Is the patient sleeping more during the day? They're not interested in eating less. Cognitive decline, losing weight, uncontrolled pain. The patient is just having uncontrolled pain, uncontrolled shortness of breath. Those are things we can start having conversations with. When you're looking at your recertifications, when you're looking at discharge planning and patients are coming up for discharge, if there's just really no place else to go, we've done everything we can. They've been on service for 60, 90 days, multiple recertifications, just not making progress. We want to start looking at those things that I just mentioned and reaching out to the referring physicians, having those conversations too, because you really have to get those doctors on board. Patients trust their doctors. And sometimes if it comes from them, they're a little bit more open to having the conversation than if we kind of suggested as therapists. So if we can get that buy-in from the doctor, it tends to have a little bit more weight when we have to start that difficult conversation.
I know, Lisa, you mentioned that you get the sort of a guest speaker once a month. Dan, do you have any type of resources? I'm just interested to know if other agencies provide that type of education and resource.
We do have a large branch of hospice attached with our company, and so what they've done is they have reached out to the clinicians, to kind of designate those PTs and OTs who would like to receive further education so that they can be better prepared to serve the hospice patients. And so they've designated certain number of clinicians per area, so that education is definitely available to them, which is really nice.
So you almost opt in.
Yeah.
Yeah, in my company, yeah. In my company, yeah.
Yeah, we're doing a lot of co-marketing too, which is great to see. So with our hospice and home health companies, we're doing a lot of, co-marketing at events and going out to facilities and really just showing that we're part of this continuum. And I think the one thing that is really helpful mindset too is a lot of times we think of hospice as a philosophy, and it's a medical specialty, right? Like, our doctors are board certified in hospice medicine. They are experts in being able to manage pain. They're experts in being able to manage nausea and symptoms like shortness of breath. And so when we go beyond thinking about it as a philosophy, it tends to give a little bit more validity to patients when they think about it that way, or family members who are struggling with making that decision. We're not just because you sign up doesn't mean you're going to die in 3 days, right? Like we have specialists. If you had a knee injury, you'd go to an ortho doctor. If you had, a brain injury, you'd go to a neurologist. Like we have specialists who are trained to make you comfortable and to give you, the optimization of what's left in your life.
So maybe as we wrap things up, we've talked with you about so many different topics and, speech therapy in the home and now hospice and also leadership. So you're a, former home health speech therapist that is now leading a hospice, a large hospice organization. What kind of advice would you have? I know last time we talked a little bit about the fact that there's nothing that anyone can tell you can't do because it's almost like a challenge. Like I'm gonna rise to this occasion. So if I'm out there listening to this now and thinking to myself, because I talk to therapists all the time that they get burnt out, right? And they are trying to think about, okay, what's next? I don't want to, continue, to have to worry about productivity, or I'm tired of this or that. And I want to get, onto the other side of things. And you'd mentioned, building a network. Any other suggestions for how to sort of make that like transition, like that? It's essentially a career transition.
Yeah.
How do you go from kind of always knowing like one piece of this? I've always been a PT, or I've always been a clinician, I've always been in home health, and now not even 3-4 years later, you're leading this entire organization.
Yeah, I think it's really finding what you're passionate about. So, if you like quality, if you are a numbers person, if you like, leadership, it's finding what excites you and interests you, and, starting with reading. I did a lot of reading, and found books or got suggestions for books on leadership, or found a speaker that I really liked, and decided to follow more of him online, and read. So, reading up on those things, again, building that network, maybe finding somebody at a company that you're currently in who is in a position of leadership, and asking them, what are the other opportunities for growth here? What can I do? Setting up a regular cadence of meetings with the person that you might find a good mentor for yourself, and saying, hey, are there things that we can talk about on a monthly basis or a weekly basis? Can I start taking on more responsibility? Things that I can help with, and just really finding what interests you and motivates you, and a person that's willing to spend that time and invest in you, is super important, because it's when you feel supported and you have a safety net of somebody that you can like bounce questions and ideas off of, and really invests in you, is important. And so if you're ready to start thinking about those changes, just finding those people where you are that you can learn from, and then doing the research and doing the homework and putting in the time. There's tons of seminars online, there's great reading out there. So just encouraging, just go for it. You have to put the time in. It's not easy. There's moments when you think, what am I doing? Did I really get myself into this? But I think if you believe in yourself and you're willing to put in the work, and you surround yourself with good people, like it's possible.
What was it when you made the jump? Was it maybe not intimidating, but was it nerve-wracking to know that, okay, here now I'm in these meetings with all of these people like me, like I live my life in, as like, Microsoft Excel,
Yeah.
and I've been using PowerPoint since I was 20, and I've been, in these different meetings, and, that type of like business perspective, like, was that aspect of it difficult?
Yeah, I am not a techie person, and I am not a spreadsheet person, and those things, yeah, they're very intimidating to me. And again, it's just putting in the time and learning. So and being honest, right? It's sometimes you can fake it till you make it, and that works. And then there's other times when you have to be really honest and say, what, this is a weakness that I have, and I have to get better at it. And then finding somebody, like I said, who's willing to mentor you, or putting in the time to learn. So yeah, it's intimidating, but again, like I have always believed in myself and said, I can do this. And it just is a matter of really wanting it and putting in the work. And I think when you have that and the drive, and people outside of work who support you. You know, my family, whenever I've made another leap to do something bigger, we always had a conversation about it. I had small children. I still, my girls are 13, and we talked about it every step of the way before, I accepted the position working with you, Dan. Like, we talked, this is going to change things, right? And I'm going to need your support. I can't do this by myself. And, so when you have people that you can lean on and who help you and understand that this is going to be a lot of work and take time away, it's okay. Like, that gives you the strength and the drive and the energy to be able to do those things because you have a good support network around you. So being honest with yourself, being honest with your family, being honest with the people you work with, and saying, these are my strengths, these are my weaknesses, and let's do this together.
What was it? And you can be honest. Was it frustrating, going from, hey, I'm spending my week helping, people, individuals, patients are people, and then flipping into like more of a business aspect where you're sitting there, looking at the same people, but now they're a number or a metric or a KPI or something? Was it like nobody understands?
You know what? No, so for me, there's a person or a patient behind every number. And so I always keep it under that mindset. And that's something that I have to rectify with my staff too, right? Clinicians are they don't want to hear about the numbers, right? When you keep talking about growth and census and productivity, like, that's frustrating to them because we just want to take care of people. But if you are someone who can marry those two things and explain the why, like when we have our census where it needs to be and the financials where they need to be, that gives us the opportunity to bring in more staff and treat more people. And if you can connect the why, that helps people a lot. And for me, I still am in a place, I'm very lucky that I don't have to sit behind a desk. Yes, I have those responsibilities and there is desk time, but I'm out in the field. Like, I was out all day today at nursing homes, and I go to our inpatient units and I get to connect with the patients and their families. And that's such an important piece to me because I get to hear from them. What are we doing well? Like, what do you like? What can we do better? And that's important to me because they share those great stories and they tell us, this nurse changed my dad's life, or, you guys really screwed up and you really, need to do better next time. And that's a great thing for me to hear too, because that does tell us what we can do to make things better. So I get to balance both. I'm in a really lucky position.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Well, it sounds, I'm sure to everyone listening, and for someone like me who's worked with you personally, there's a saying, luck is where opportunity meets preparation. And I would say that is a perfect explanation of your quote unquote luck.
I am very blessed. I'm very lucky to be doing what I love.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us a second time.
Absolutely. It's been so much fun.
Thank you.
We have to end so that Dan doesn't get eaten by the bugs.
Yeah, it's getting dark. We're worried about you, Dan. Get inside.
I'm okay. I am surprisingly okay.
Oh, well, thank you so much. We'll talk soon.
My pleasure. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you,
All right.
Teresa.
Bye-bye.